Oh, yeah!
Hey, welcome to another episode of Spear from the Past. It's going to be fun. Today we're going to be talking about WWF pay-per-view Invasion. And as soon as I said what one I was doing, Austin was like, "You got to have me on it." So I've got Austin here. Austin, how's it going?
Man, this is my jam. Most people that know me know this is like the era of wrestling that I kind of like really got into and started watching was like 2000, 2001, all this stuff when the companies unfortunately were ending and this stuff happened and all that. But yeah, it's the stuff I've gone back to probably the most. So I have a lot of nostalgia for this era, Malcolm.
But I will say it is really fitting that it is having to be a cross-branded pay-per-view when we've got Worlds Collide happening this weekend, which I have actually forgot.
Somebody bought the competition.
Yeah.
Putting on the pay-per-view.
But that, as I always like to start these off these days, I always like to do a thing called On This Day, and I was doing some research, like the number one movie of worldwide on the day this pay-per-view sort of happened was Jurassic Park 3. The number one song on the Billboard Hot 100 charts was "You Remind Me" by Usher. I actually remember jamming to that song a lot.
He just
And the number
at the Super Bowl again, last year or something. Whenever we
yeah.
Super Bowl last year, yeah, that was a throwback.
And the number one album was "Devil's Night" by D12. But with that, it's time to jump into this pay-per-view. The first match we had was Edge and Christian versus Lance Storm and Mike Awesome, who I believe was WCW. But yeah, I thought this match was a pretty fun tag match and a good way to sort of open up the show. And yeah, I thought it was entertaining. Like they all got their usual spots in. I'm not actually that familiar with Lance Storm, Mike Awesome, so I don't know too much about them. But Austin will probably pull me on those ones.
Yeah,
but,
I'll fill you in, no problem.
Yeah. But Austin, what did you thoughts about this match?
Yeah, no, it was a solid opener. So it was weird seeing Lance Storm and Mike Awesome actually be in team because they were actually both ECW and WCW alumni. So they both started in ECW, then went to WCW mostly for the year 2000. Storm was actually got quite the push in WCW in 2000. At one point, he was the United States Hardcore and Cruiserweight champion all at the same time, all three belts, and Brandon them all Canadian championships. So it was a fun little run he had for a little while. Mike Awesome got brought in as the career killer. Mike Awesome got a little bit of a push initially and then got bogged down with two awful gimmicks of the Fat Chick Thriller and that 70s guy, Mike Awesome, which is pretty terrible. So it ended on a kind of rough note. Mike Awesome hardly did anything in WWF after this. Like he barely wrestled any matches. He was featured here, barely wrestled at all, and then got released not long after. Storm lasted a little while. I wish it had been Lance Storm, Edge and Christian versus Lance Storm and Just Incredible, the Impact players from ECW. That would have made a little more sense and maybe a little bit better match overall, but still solid for what it was. You know, it was weird seeing the crowd cheer for Edge and Christian. They were mostly heels around this time, even though Edge was starting to turn face, and like they were doing a thing where Edge and Christian were about to feud over, this would lead up to a ladder match a few months later when they would finally kind of turn on each other. Yeah, it was solid overall. The crowd was hot. Kind of a weak looking spear to end the thing where Christian hit a spear and Edge kind of landed on top of Mike Awesome. But they gave this match at least a little bit of time, at least compared to the rest of the matches on the show, as we'll talk about. But it didn't feel too rushed. And yeah, it got the crowd going. Not a bad little opener.
But yeah, and I was reading someone's review of the same pay-per-view, just sort of see what other people were thinking about this, and it's going to be the theme for most of this. Like a lot of the WB guys were supposed to be heels, but they were being cheered for because of course it's hometown for them, and everyone else.
I'll talk about that in a few different matches. Yeah, and again, Malcolm, pardon me if I give you an extra minute of context for some of these guys of where they're coming from, like WCW, ECW wise. Like it's just more for context of like their characters and whatnot. I'll do my best.
But next up, we had the throughout the show having various pep talk segments with Vince or Shane and Stephanie giving their teams pep talk. The first one we had was like Vince talking to Regal, celebrating Edge and Christian winning, and then Regal tells him Stone Cold has arrived, and Vince, for whatever reasons, like, has not really talked to Stone Cold. Then Vince was giving Regal a pep talk, and then for some reason mentioned the Revolutionary War, which I don't think was a perfect metaphor for the match. But
Well, yeah, because Regal's
backstage
so yeah, they're mentioning red coats and
yeah,
go out there and kick ass like George Washington is not the greatest thing to Regal, but Regal called people toe rags and said he was gonna beat up Raven later. So yeah.
yeah. But next up we had a referee match, which was Earl Hebner defeating Nick Patrick. Look, this match was what it was. It was a fun sort of comedy match. It was fun seeing a whole bunch of referees around, like some that I recognised because I think I saw Charles Robinson out there, who's been in the company for however long now. And but this was what it was. It was just a fun comedy match. And then after the match, Mick Foley attacked Nick Patrick, Mr. Socko. I don't know if it was ever explained why sort of Mick Foley was the special guest referee for this. Maybe it was
he just showed up on Sunday Night Heat like an hour before the show, and he was just brought in so that the crowd wouldn't like die a death. And then I guess it was supposed to be he would be sort of the unbiased referee, so you wouldn't have either a WWF referee or a WCW referee reffing the ref match. So you just had a wrestler reffing the ref match. But as a referee, Malcolm, as you know, I refereed pro wrestling for well over 15 years. I don't think referees should be in matches at all. Look, I understand sometimes they get involved, here and there and whatnot, but having a referee versus referee match is kind of ridiculous. Although to give them credit, the crowd was still fairly into it for what it was, and they kept it. They did keep it under 3 minutes, so it was relatively quick. There was a lot of smoke and mirrors where they would roll to the outside, and the two, bands of referees would kind of go at it for a second and then kind of roll it back in. Like, it was a very simply laid out match where it was just like very simple spots. Nick Patrick was always a decent seller, though. Like, he was very over the top in his selling, so that was okay. But yeah, second match in a row, Malcolm, that ended in a spear because Earl Hebner hit a horrible spear to then pin Nick Patrick, and then afterwards, Foley gave him the Socko claw. But yeah, I mean, the only weird thing was, I think to bolster the WCW ref numbers, there was one guy who wasn't a WCW referee out there, because you had Charles Robinson. Nick Patrick was. There was one other guy that I recognize. I'm blanking on his name for a minute. But then they also had Brian Hebner, the guy with the blonde or the really like bleach blonde hair. That's Brian Hebner. That's Earl Hebner's son, just pretending to be a WCW referee, even though he was not originally. So that was a little weird just to have him out there. But I mean, it was what it was. Not good. But you know what? I've actually seen worse matches. So at least it was short. I'll say that.
Yeah. But then next up, we had just a quick backstage segment of the wives of DDP and Undertaker talking, and Deborah just said that there will be nothing left for DDP after Undertaker done with them. Like, it was just a quick backstage segment. Nothing really of consequence here, but just what it was.
Are you aware of what the DDP Taker like storyline consisted of, Malcolm, or what it was?
Not really.
So there was a storyline where right before DDP was kind of debuted in the company, there was a thing where somebody was stalking the Undertaker's wife, Sarah, who was on this show. Not Michelle McCool, for anybody who doesn't know. He was married to this girl named Sarah for a little while. But it was wondering, like, who's the stalker, filming her, at the house, filming her here and there. The mask came off. It was DDP, which was really stupid at the time because DDP was a face. He was a beloved WCW guy, and they immediately made him a heel, which made him really weird. And then, he got into this kind of awkward bad feud with the Undertaker, and even right after this match, I believe on one of the Raws afterwards, had a match with Sarah in which Undertaker interfered, and then Sarah pinned DDP right in the middle of the ring and killed any momentum he might have had in this company dead. It's one of the all-time great blunders of a character, one of the many of this whole storyline.
Yeah, and Sarah, she was Sable, wasn't that is that the same one, or was that someone else?
Sarah,
Undertaker's wife, was that Sable at the time?
No. It was just a random woman named Sarah who was here for on camera maybe 2 months and then never showed up again. And
Yeah.
then I believe Undertaker divorced her maybe in like 06, 07. Yeah, eventually married Michelle
Right.
McCool. No, Sable came back to the company in I believe 2003 as an on-camera personality on SmackDown.
Yeah. But then next up we had another tag team match, which was the APA, Bradshaw and Farouk defeating Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Haire. I know a little about Chuck Palumbo from when he was I know he went to WWE. He did wrestle in WWE. I think he was in at least one of the WWE video games I played. I don't know too much about Sean O'Haire, but the match I thought was pretty good. Like there was a moment where it was where they were doing like hot tags in the corner, and it was just a lot of fun. So, but also, what do you thought of this tag match?
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, yeah, Sean O'Haire and Chuck Palumbo. Palumbo lasted a little longer than Sean O'Haire did. But both they came from WCW, kind of later at WCW. They had a faction called the Natural Born Thrillers. So that's what this tag team essentially was just a brief combination of O'Haire and Palumbo that also had Mark Jindrak and Sean Stasiak. That's where a lot of those guys came from. They were all part of the Natural Born Thrillers. But Sean O'Haire, I really like that dude, and he didn't do a lot, unfortunately. He got tossed around kind of in the middle of this invasion thing for a little bit. He kind of went off TV for a little bit. I think they sent him back to OVW, and then he came back on TV in 2003, and his biggest thing was he was like involved in the like Roddy Piper, Mr. America feud kind of a thing, Vince McMahon feud. He was kind of mixed in with that and had a little bit of a spotlight, but unfortunately didn't last too much longer after that. I liked him a lot. He's a big, tall guy who can move and very athletic. But yeah, him and Palumbo were a decent tag team here. I always usually like the APA just because, they're just going to beat the hell out of somebody and it's going to be more of a brawl than anything else. So, it's just a bunch of smash mouth kind of stuff, but a bunch of big guys wailing on each other. Not too much to it. It's very, very basic. It was an okay brawl for what it was. Yeah, and just lets the APA look strong here.
Yeah. But then next up, we had a quick backstage segment with Vince talking to Chris Jericho, of him saying what he knows about WCW and ECW, saying that WCW has no sort of authority figure and is really lawless, and that ECW is Paul Heyman, and says that E stands for ooh, which look, it was a really, and it's one of those ones I do quite like Chris Jericho, especially when he's doing his promos like this. I think it's entertaining. This is just one of those ones that kind of work, but not really, because I think there was one so all we have to do is put out Oola onto the other team or something like that. But what any thoughts of the spectators?
No, it was just Jericho. A lot of his promos around this time were just making fun of people's appearance, and he did a lot to Stephanie McMahon as well, and just calling people ugly and whatnot. And yeah, this segment was him and Vince stealing his never ever catchphrase and whatnot. So it was what it was. It was just kind of a typical 2001 Chris Jericho promo of him just spitting out a few of his lines and just being him. But he 2001 was some of the most over he ever was, as we'll talk about in the main event. He was super over with the crowd around this time, though. They were big on Chris Jericho.
But then next stage, we had the backstage segment with Stephanie and Shane telling Billy Kidman that he has to win, which is totally not giving him, not putting pressure on him. But which leads into the next match, which is Billy Kidman defending X-Pac. And the match itself, I thought was pretty decent. And it's one of those ones I always think X-Pac's a good work, and I don't think I know much about Billy Kidman. But also, what are your thoughts about this match?
Yeah, Kidman was probably one of the mainstays of especially the late era cruiserweight division WCW from kind of 96 to the end there. He had a tag team with Rey Mysterio at one point. They were tag team champions, but yeah, he was very over with the Shooting Star and all that stuff, kind of an underdog character who broke out of the Ravens flock. So yeah, he was one of the bigger stars they brought over, at least one of the more recognizable guys. They let him keep his WCW theme music. The one he came out to was his WCW song. So that was cool. I always like that song. But yeah, X-Pac's a good worker. But yeah, this is a weird dynamic, Malcolm, where the fans don't like X-Pac because he's kind of the fans are just not fans of him in the WWF, even though he's fighting for the WWF. But and Kidman was mostly a baby face in WCW, except for during his feud with Hulk Hogan in 2000. But he was mostly kind of an underdog baby face. But yeah, this is a good match. I like this. I wish it had a few more minutes to breathe. I feel like they're going 100 miles an hour for a good chunk of it, just trying to get all their spots in. But they had some really fun spots. My note here was if you know any Kidman matches, you never try to powerbomb Billy Kidman because he'll always counter it into the facebuster every single time, which happened here. There was a good spot where Kidman tried to do a dive and X-Pac caught him in the X Factor, so that was cool. And then the crowd popped big for the Shooting Star and they wanted to see it and they got it. One of the ones where I think the crowd was rooting for the WCW person, and kind of rightfully so. But yeah, I thought it was fun. I just wish it had about 2 or 3 extra minutes to kind of breathe a little bit, so they could slow down just a tad. But overall, I liked it.
Next up, we had DDP talking to Shane, who tells him to get focused on the match. Nothing much really there. Then we had Tori Wilson and Stacey Keibler talking about their bra and panties match coming up, which ended with I can't remember which was which, but I do remember one of them slapped the other's ass. Like, you do have a fine ass.
Well, Tori was talking about her boobs, and Stacey was talking about her legs and her ass, and that was like most of the promo. And then and the cameraman was like doing the shots from the floor up and stuff like that. Yeah, it was just typical like 2001 WWF diva kind of stuff.
Yeah,
for sure.
And we'll get more into that when we get to the actual match. What they've been doing with women in this era. Then we Raven versus William Regal, which was the match was fine. One thing I did notice is there was barely any reaction whatsoever in this match from the crowd. And the one from Taz, I don't know if there was any storyline for Taz to be involved in this match, but it felt kind of random and out of place. But also, what do you think of Raven versus Regal?
This match just had no heat, and what I mean by that is just the crowd was just dead for it. And I think one of the problems, Malcolm, was the crowd was never this WWF crowd was never really into Raven. I think the Raven character was never given a chance to really develop in the WWF, and nobody really cared that much. And he was never really treated as a star or anything like that as much as he was in ECW or WCW, for that matter. I've never been that high on Raven either. I like the character to a degree in some of the storylines, especially back in ECW, but as a wrestler, I think he's just kind of okay. I like William Regal, but I like him more when he's in there with guys he can just kind of smash with, like when you would have matches with Benoit or Fit Finlay or some of those guys where they could just have like kind of a brawl and wrestle a little bit and whatnot. I just don't think they had any chemistry here. Again, their work rate was fine for what it was. They hit their moves and everything, but crowd just didn't care, and it just came off kind of boring as a result of that. So I think this is one of the matches, if you had to like cut like 1 or 2 matches, I think, from the show, because there's 10 matches on the show, I think it's a little too much for what it is, just because the pacing, you could have probably cut this match, and I really don't think it would have been that big a deal. You could have had it on SmackDown or Raw, and I think it would have been fine.
Yeah. But next up, we had Vince trying to motivate Undertaker and Kane, which was once again just one of the typical pep talk segments that were there. And then we had the team of Chris Kanyon, humorous, which most people might know as from Tough Enough, Bull DeMott, which I actually looked that up later. Mm-hmm. And Sean Stasiak defeated Big Show, Albert, and Billy Gunn, which for a 6-man tag, this felt super rushed.
Very rushed. It's like 4 minutes. Jeez.
Yeah. And it's one of those like, and especially like coming into this not knowing too much about like Chris Kanyon, the winning team, is like, it's just one of those ones like I don't know much what to say. It's like I think they all kind of got some moves in, but it's like it's pretty much it. But Austin, what are your thoughts about the 6-man tag?
Yeah, this one is really random, and another one that it would have made a note for an okay, like Raw, 5-minute kind of random match. But these guys don't really have anything to do with each other, and it's another weird dynamic where Stasiak was part of the Natural Born Thrillers, Hugh Morris was part of MIA, Canyon was like just part of the New Blood, and not really like these. So these three guys on the WCW faction really didn't have anything to do with each other. It's just like three random guys we had, still left over, just trying to get people on the pay-per-view. Big Show and Billy Gunn didn't really have anything to do with each other. They were both over the crowd, but it was weird because Albert was thrown in there, and he's part of the X Factor tag team with Xbox, so the crowd didn't really like cheer for him because he's part of that. But it's just made for a weird dynamic. I like Albert a lot. I'm probably one of the bigger Albert fans on the planet. I think he's awesome. Yeah. But I mean, these guys look good. They did a nice spot where they all did a press slam spot, to all three of the other guys. That looked pretty good. And the actual spots where they were all hitting finishers at the end was okay. But yeah, it was like 4 minutes. It was just, it felt like it was thrown together, like to just get people on the show. And again, you didn't need this on the show. I think you could have cut this and it would have been just fine without it on the show. Just super random and, whatever. Crowd pop when Big Show just started chokeslamming everybody after the match. That's fine.
Then next up, we had Shane McMahon hyping up Booker T, which was pretty standard for Booker T. And then we had a backstage segment of Regal telling Tajiri to defeat Taz for all of WWF, which once again was probably one of the most random hyping up things. And I don't know if this match was ever like announced or if this was one that they threw in here because of Taz's involvement. But we had Tajiri defeating Taz, even though Taz was in control most of the match. Then Tajiri just did his stuff and pull out the win in the end. But also, what do you think of Tajiri versus Taz?
No, I love Tajiri. Tajiri is one of my favorite guys from around this time to watch, and the crowd he's super over with the crowd. His kicks are always great. Some of his moves are always unique and fun to watch. I think that the crowd actually eventually ended up getting into this match because, again, Tajiri has a lot of charisma. Taz was throwing some nice suplexes here and there, some nice Tazplexes. There was a good buzzsaw kick at the end of it, but these guys worked very fast, very hard. Eventually got the crowd into it. It again felt kind of rushed. It goes like 5 minutes, and then it's over. He wins with the mist and the kick. But yeah, it wasn't bad. If you want to see these guys have a slightly longer match with maybe even a little more of what they can do, ECW Heatwave 1999, Malcolm, Taz versus Tajiri for the world title, much better, and given a little more room to breathe. But still, I think these guys at least had chemistry. You could tell, there were two ECW. It was weird again because there's technically two ECW guys because Tajiri was, but he came in before the invasion as Regal's little assistant guy, and then eventually started wrestling. So, but stayed on the WWF side. So weird, in that, but they at least had that previous chemistry, and you could feel that here.
Yeah, and then we had Matt giving Jeff a pep talk before his matches. RVD comes along and attacks Matt afterwards. Once again, standard stuff we've been seeing all night, which leads to RVD defeating Jeff Hardy for the hardcore title, which it kind of surprised that this was the only sort of title match we had on the show. It was like, especially with the fact that, because I think it was 2 months before this when WCW was officially sort of dead. Like, they could have done this and done a few champion versus champion, had like total unification things throughout the night, which might have been a little bit much more fun way to do it. But still, like, Jeff Hardy's always been one of my favorite like wrestlers. I've said this a few times, like, so it's always fun seeing him. And this match was a really good like hardcore match. Well, I don't know if it was I think it had to be a hardcore match before the hardcore title, but it's like
it was.
But not that they really used a lot of weapons, which always irks me. It's like these hardcore matches, like all of them using like chairs and kendo sticks and stuff. It's like, but it's still a good match. Like RVD and Jeff Hardy, like they both can do really good matches. And I would probably put this up there as one of the better ones, and I think it's a lot of fun. So, Austin, what do you think about RVD versus Jeff
Yeah,
Hardy?
I think this is the match of the night. I think this match rules. This match is awesome. It holds up. I remember this being one of the match of the year candidates, even at the end of the show. And I think it just ended up being really special because RVD, there was a definitely a contingent of the crowd that knew who he was. This was kind of his big sort of first match in the company. So some people kind of knew what he was, but I think a lot of the fans, the WWE fans who hadn't seen him, were really impressed by what he was doing in the ring and when he was getting over, the crowd, and it finally kind of woke the crowd up and gave him something to get into. You could feel the crowd kind of getting more and more hyped for the match as it kept kind of going and going. This is one of the best years ever for the hardcore title. I will say Raven and Rhino had a really awesome hardcore title match at Backlash 2001 earlier this year. One of my favorite hardcore title matches ever. And then RVD picking up the hardcore title here helped him out because it let him have a lot of hardcore title matches going forward and let him do kind of the more ECW style that he was used to doing, with some of the crowd brawling, with some of the big spots that he does, stuff with the chairs, and he could do that, and it was all legal. It really built up. It was really good stuff. They had some fun brawling in the crowd. The Van Daminator spot on the stage was really great, where Jeff kind of fell into the, the little pit thing on the stage. That was fun. He had a really scary fall off a ladder kind of there, but RVD getting to do like his corkscrew leg drop and everything. He had a great 5-star frog splash at the end. These guys had great chemistry. I think they gelled really well. And if you're interested in seeing more of them, Malcolm, they had a hardcore title ladder match at SummerSlam 2001 that is also a great match that they have really good chemistry with, it was a ladder match where they hung the hardcore title over the ring and just basically had a ladder match, but it's a really good one as well. So, if you want to see these guys run this back, it's really great. But RVD was a hardcore champion. Yeah.
I think I might have seen that. I think that might be one of the matches that's on the Jeff Hardy confirmation DVD that WWE did when they were still doing the DVDs of certain wrestlers and their careers and with the documentary sort of thing.
I was gonna say it's also on that. There was like a ladder match set, like a 3-disc ladder match set around that time, and I think it's on there as well. But that's a really good one too. For my money, this is the match of the night, just because the way it developed, the way the crowd got super into it as it went on, both guys getting over huge, and the reaction to everything. I just think it was kind of a perfect little match. The way it just kind of works. So great stuff here, and I think this match holds up really well. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. But then we had another one of these pep talk things with Vince talking to Kurt Angle. And then we go into Trish Stratus and Lita versus Tori Wilson and Stacey Keibler in a bra and panties tag team match. And look, the gimmick was what it was. Like, it was basically what they were doing for them this time, like doing them as kind of ballets or these ridiculous matches in which the goal was to get the wrestlers into down to their bra and panties and once again I don't know. Once again, Mick Foley just happened to come out for the special guest referee here. Is like this one, because I think even the announcers had no idea why he was down there. It's like he just came out as a special guest referee. It's like, okay. Look, I'm not going to lie if I'd said I wasn't entertained by seeing some good-looking woman in this, but it was the match itself was decent, but it was one of those ones like I don't know if it needed to be like this far down the card, But also, what are your thoughts about the Brian?
Well, it's the classic cool down thing, kind of before the big main event, before the before the main event, before all the big stars come out. So that just that little buffer match, and it's totally just for the eye candy of the different four women here. But Tori and Stacey were not really wrestlers coming into this, so it would have been difficult for them to have just sort of a regular tag team match because Stacey didn't wrestle in WCW, and really neither did Tori. They both would start wrestling a little bit once they got here, kind of after the fact. But yeah, I mean, it's just a way to showcase them a little bit. Hey, look at the WCW women we'll keep around. They look really good. It's definitely a product of its time. You don't see bra and panties matches anymore at all. Can you imagine if they did one of these in 2025? That'd be they just wouldn't fly like at all. I mean, it's a thing they did for a couple of years. The crowd liked it. My only like weird quibble with this, actually enough, Malcolm, is why are they like tagging and stuff, or just why was one person waiting on the apron when the only way to win is to take the brawn, is to strip them down the brawn?
Yeah.
You can't get disqualified or anything. So like, it always
Yeah.
bugs me when there's basically a match with no DQs and people are making tags and just waiting on the apron for stuff. Like, it's just weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just eye candy, and it was what it was. So yeah.
But then next up, we had the last of the two pep talk segments. First, we had Stephanie Paul Heyman talking to all the ECW and WCW crew, and then Vince trying to give Stone Cold a pep talk. And then we get into the main event, which they've been calling the inaugural brawl, which kind of makes you believe they were planning more of these, and then for whatever reason they didn't end up doing any more of these.
Yeah.
But it was like Team WCW and ECW, which was Booker T, Bubba Ray Dudley, Devon Dudley, DP, and Rhino, and they defeated Team WWE, which was Chris Jericho, Kane, Kurt Angle, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Undertaker. Look, I mean, it's one of those ones like, I think the match itself was decent, and they gave the match some good time. And honestly, like, I wouldn't have been angry if they decided to make this like an Survivor Series type match. I know they had the Survivor Series pay-per-view, but it's like this would have been a fun, like, if they did it as a Survivor Series match instead, like a one person wins sort of thing.
Yeah.
But one thing I did find was weird after I was reading up about is like, apparently like Stone Cold had turned heel, like had turned face like early on in the year or something, and like he turned back to heel in this match. It's like giving the Team Alliance the win. It was like so I thought that would be messed with people's minds and stuff. But also, what are your thoughts about this match?
Yeah, so I'll give people a little context on the Stone Cold thing. So yeah, he turned heel at WrestleMania that year. He shook Vince McMahon's hand. Vince helped him win the title. Then they started doing this kind of heel Stone Cold where he was, buddy with Vince McMahon and this whole thing. It wasn't really going over well with the crowd. Like, it just wasn't doing good business. Stone Cold liked doing the gimmick, and I actually thought he was really entertaining in the gimmick, especially even for the rest of the year. So I think he's really fun doing it, but it was not doing great for business. So they teased him going back face back to the old Stone Cold, the Raw before, in a really, really awesome segment. If you ever go back and watch that Raw where he showed up at the end of the show and kind of blew through all the WCW and ECW guys and stunned everybody. It was really great. Good stuff. But yeah, and then on the end of the show, he turns back heel when technically he was already still a heel. So he just had a double heel turn essentially and turned even more heel in aligning himself with the Alliance here. So yeah, it was just one thing where he didn't really want to give up the character. He wanted to keep doing it for a little bit longer, so they just kept it going a little bit longer. But yeah, this match is a little weird that there's not really any stakes, Malcolm, like at all. Like, what's the stakes of this match? They're just kind of having a match. It's not like, oh, the winner of this thing, takes over Raw the next night or whatever, or does this, does that. Like, it's really just kind of a match. I really think it could have used, and this is a problem just with the overall Invasion storyline, it could have used one or two of those extra really big WCW stars, like a Sting, like a Ric Flair, which they unfortunately didn't have in here. So instead, you got like Rhino and the Dudley Boys and stuff, which is fine. But it really could have used kind of those bigger stars. Yeah, it's a little weird that it's not elimination, but they would go on to do that at the Survivor Series. They did a 5-on-5 where it was a winner take all, WCW versus WWF, like winner take all, and Stone Cold was the head of one side and then Rock was the head of the other side. So they would eventually do that. But I mean, it's basically just a showcase of all these guys. Crowd was still super into it. The entrances were hot. They got things going very quickly. It did get a little repetitive, over the 30 minutes where it's like one guy would just get beat up for a little while, kind of hot tag one of the other big stars, come in and run wild, get cut up for a little bit, eventually tag in one of the other big stars, kind of rinse and repeat, for 25 minutes or so. But the last couple of minutes are really fun where it just all kind of breaks down. Undertaker and DDP go off and they're brawling around. Kane's like choke slamming people through tables. Rhino's putting people through tables. It kind of breaks down at the end. Kurt Angle's about to win the match. And yeah, Stone Cold turns heel again and kicks Kurt Angle and stuns him, and Booker T wins. So yeah, again, leaving kind of a swerve for the final thing. So it's a little repetitive, but the crowd's still into it. These are still big stars, especially with the WWF side. It's still fun for what it is, especially all these guys who were super hot around this time. Jericho and Kane and Undertaker and Stone Cold and all these guys. So still a fun main event for what it was, and probably still the second best match on the show, in my opinion. So not bad for what it is. I enjoyed it, but yeah, it was. Yeah, I think the Stone Cold heel turn, people were kind of into, classic Stone Cold returning, and I think they wanted to see that. And unfortunately, Stone Cold and Vince McMahon had other plans to just keep this going for a little while longer, and they kept it going for a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm not going to ask the usual question like about what you change, because I've got different questions for this specific pay-per-view. Because with the TNA and WWE alliance that they've kind of got at the moment, and obviously with AAA and that, would you like to see them sort of run this pay-per-view back, but with having like TNA doing the invasion angle and something like that, where like no like company is like being bought out or anything, where it's like a proper like crossover pay-per-view in that. Would you like to see them try to do it?
Well, I mean, here's the thing with TNA, though. TNA is not as big as WCW was at this time. WCW truly was the number 2 company and really was like legitimate competition for a while. So I think doing a WWE versus TNA thing now would be fun, but I don't think it would have quite the same spark that this had at the time, just because not as many people watch TNA. I mean, AEW is the clear number 2 company right now, so it would have to be more of like a WWE versus AEW type of thing, to be a true sort of invasion thing. But then again, like who would win, who would what, the politics of it would be a mess. At the time, it only worked here at least to a degree because it was already out of business and you were using all these guys. So yeah, I mean, they could definitely do NXT versus TNA. I think that could happen full blown, and I think they might be building even to something like that, where that could be a thing. But that's more on a similar level, of viewership. But it's not quite as big. TNA at its peak, if you had done a back and forth thing, would have had to have been like maybe 2006. 2007, where it was at its peak on like Spike TV, and like when Kurt Angle went to TNA, and like that was about its peak of like its popularity, I think, at a time. There was a real small period there where it was getting close to being legitimate competition.
Yeah. But Austin, what are your thoughts about the pay-per-view as a whole? What would you give it out of 5 stars?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it's definitely a mixed bag. As I have the nostalgia for it. Again, it's one that I had on DVD, and I just have nostalgia for this kind of era of WWF and whatnot around this time. And as kind of a mixed bag as the Invasion pay-per-view was, I still had fun with it for what it was, because I did start coming into wrestling kind of the tail end of WCW and ECW's run there, so I appreciate that for what it is. The pay-per-view itself is an ups and downs of like, it's never really boring. The matches go pretty quickly, so there's always kind of something new starting every few minutes. I do think there's one too many matches. I think you could have cut the referee match, you could have cut the random 6-man, you could have cut William Regal and Raven, and maybe given some of that time to a few of the other matches, or just squeezed in one other different match. I think it's kind of like right in the middle, because I think the inaugural brawl is fun for what it is, and I do think RVD and Jeff Hardy is legitimately like a pretty fun like sort of match of the year contender. It's really, really good, so that does bump it up a little bit. I'm going to go right in the middle and say a 2.5 out of 5, and say it's kind of right down the middle, because like there's enough good to make it not really like a bad pay-per-view per se, but there's not enough like great to make it a great one either. And yeah, there's enough good to keep it out of the negative territory either. So yeah, it's like right in the middle at like a 2.5 for me.
Yeah. For me, as someone who sort of came into this with no expectations, and that in fact, like, I didn't know a lot of these people as well, but like I was largely entertained by it. Well, yes, like some of the actual wrestling wasn't the best. I was still entertained enough to go a little bit higher. I actually went like 4 out of 5. Like I actually,
Wow.
for the most part, I actually really enjoyed the pay-per-view.
Okay. Fair enough.
But it's time to spin the wheel, see what the next one I'm doing. Which I thought I had.
And for anybody wondering what my shirt is, this is the Invasion era WCW logo that some of the guys were wearing on the show tonight. So I have one of these shirts. So that's what I'm wearing today.
But that the wheel is spinning, and hopefully it is going to be one I'll be able to. I don't have to respin this multiple times. Which it doesn't look like it's going to be, because it's Breaking Point 2009, which I'm pretty sure is on Netflix.
Okay. Is that one of the random John Cena Randy Orton matches? I think Breaking Point.
I believe so. It's definitely
yeah. Which that would be oddly ironic given the fact that we just had maybe the last John Cena Randy Orton match, Malcolm. So you can go back and see kind of, in the middle of their kind of big series around this time where they were wrestling each other every other pay-per-view. Maybe I could be misremembering that, but
it was the I Quit match.
So it was. Okay. I did remember that correctly. Yeah, the I Quit match, John Cena Randy Orton. And CM Punk and The Undertaker in a submission match. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
But definitely some interesting matches. There's a lot of people who were actually on the Invasion one popping up again. We've got Jericho, Big Show popping up again as Jericho, but that'll be next time around. Austin, where can we find you online?
Yeah, mostly over on the Movie Hero Network, co-hosting or hosting lots of stuff over there. And if you'd like to see me talk more wrestling, it's right below my name right there. Every Thursday night at 10 p.m., the Lonely Marks Wrestling Podcast. You can find that just by searching on YouTube. We have our own separate channel for that. Myself, JPO, Richie, and Jacob Barber, who you've probably all seen here and there here on Spear from the Past. We all talk wrestling every week on Lonely Marks Wrestling Podcast. You can join us there.
And you'll probably be talking about a couple of releases this week as well.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of news to talk about this week. Yeah, a few big games being released, so we got things to talk about for sure. Yeah.
But you can find me on Tape Productions, those to rank them every week. This week we're going to be ranking the movies of Mike Flanagan, with the exception of Life of Chuck, because the majority of the panel aren't able to see it, because both me and Richie, it doesn't come out like for another month or so, and then
it's unfortunate because it's really good. I liked it a lot.
I don't doubt it, but it's one of those ones that I found that it's going to be opening up later for chatting Curie as well. But you can also find me on Spear from the Past. We'll be talking about Breaking Point 2009 next week. And I pop up here and there. You'll actually be able to see me in like 15 minutes on the Movie Hero Network. We'll be doing about drama movies. But if that is the end of Spear from the Past this week. And I'm going to go out on this clip because I'm annoyed that this wrestler was released.
Gentlemen, my bad.